It's been 1 year since my schizoid personality disorder diagnosis. I guess it's time for another update, specifically on the topic. I've been doing these sort of updates every 3 months, but I think this will be my last one based on time. Just, I've got some reasons, I'll get into that later. But yeah, no, so I guess a summary of where I'm at and how I'm feeling about it, and yeah, just thoughts related to it. So yeah, I mean, the past year was pretty crazy. I think when I first got the diagnosis, there's a sense of relief because finally things kind of make sense. Like, oh, I get it. This is why I'm acting this way, and it explains a lot. And I think I gave myself more permission to be less social because until that point I was sort of like, oh, I should get out of the house and I should do all these things. But yeah, getting the diagnosis, I'm like, wait a minute, this is how I am. Maybe I should be kinder to myself. And it's kind of like good and bad because in the good side of things, I gave myself some space to sort of process things and just chill out. But on the negative side, I think it set me back in terms of re-engaging with society, which I know now that the pandemic has probably set me back in that sense. It was great just not having any pressure to go anywhere and socialize and all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, yeah, I got out of practice. So that's kind of a mixed bag. And, had I not been diagnosed, maybe I would have kept up that kind of progress, but on the other hand, been stressed and not known why. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, the initial feeling was relief and sort of having more of an understanding. But then as time went on, I started thinking, why do I have this disorder? Because there's different schools of thought in where it comes from, and some of it, they think is more of a genetic or biological thing because it seems to be on the schizophrenia spectrum. Some people who have schizoid personality disorder go on to develop schizophrenia, so it's actually pre-morbid to schizophrenia. But on the other hand, there's evidence of trauma and environmental factors that can lead to schizoid personality disorder. And no one, as far as I'm aware, no one in my family is schizophrenic or, on that sort of a spectrum. My Japanese grandma was apparently a little bit interesting, but I, don't know much about her, and Japan doesn't really have a great mental health system even today. That's the only thing I can think of that might be on the genetic biological side. So I ended up looking mainly at the trauma and environmental factors, ended up figuring out that having a disabled brother was a big part of it, and I've made videos about this elsewhere. I can put something in the corner, I guess. Yeah, so then I figured out, oh, yep, childhood trauma, glass child trauma, and that really threw me off for a bit because I spent so much of my life pretending that the whole family situation didn't really affect me, but then having to admit to things like that is hard. And I think also being schizoid, a lot of personality disorders develop as a defense against, things in the world. And so it's probably part of that makes me not want to admit to things that clearly did happen and clearly are a problem, but I'm either actively denying it or subconsciously denying it. And that's the hardest bit, is when it's not something that I'm consciously doing and trying to, dig that stuff up and be like, wait a minute. And then, yeah, trying to get through that instinctive block to admit stuff. So yeah, figuring out the trauma thing, that threw me off for quite a while. And, if you can be bothered to search some of the videos, I'm sorry I don't have a playlist, just because the schizoid thing is sort of woven into other issues that I have and so on. It just didn't really make sense to me to make a specifically schizoid playlist. I don't know, someone could probably go through my videos and figure out which ones should be on it, but I just can't be bothered. I'm not that interested to do so, so you may just have to search my channel for keywords, or I don't know. But yeah, no, going through the whole trauma thing really threw me off, but I guess I've figured it out a bit, but I still don't understand what processing trauma really means. I just feel like it's like, oh, I realized a thing, and then, well, I can't do anything about it. Life is still a pain in the butt. Yeah, I don't know. But finally admitting that I had trauma is how I got on to understanding the dissociation stuff a bit better. I still don't understand fully, but, just things in my life, like even the basic depersonalization, derealization. I had similar things for ages, but anytime I looked it up, I'm like, no, I couldn't possibly have that because I don't have trauma. So yeah, getting the schizoid diagnosis leading to me admitting that I've had some kind of trauma, even though it's not like dramatic like other people's, admitting that led to me being able to admit that I have dissociation. And then that's led me to see a DID specialist, even though I don't have DID, but I do have issues with my sense of self and identity kinds of things, and just sort of in that spectrum of things, and I don't really want to go into it so much here, but I guess that maybe brings me a little bit more to why I don't want to do these updates on, like, 1 year since schizoid, 2 years since schizoid. I don't think I'm gonna do that, because the dissociation stuff, I think, to me, is a little bit more interesting and pressing and something I need to deal with more than the schizoid stuff, because the schizoid stuff is just how I've been and how I've coped with the world, and I get that, and, there's not a lot I can do about it, and there's not a lot more to understand, I feel. Whereas with the dissociation, like, I've only just accepted that that might be what's going on. I did have a struggle earlier in the year thinking, maybe I'm just delusional, because if schizoid is on the schizophrenia spectrum, maybe I am in that, a bit further towards that. But yeah, no, like, pretty much every, the doctors and psychologists, they're all telling me it's dissociation, so at some point I should probably take their advice seriously. And yeah, that's, it's a lot of issues that I just never brought up with psychologists and doctors and psychiatrists before, because, it felt kind of childish to feel like, I'm not always me. Like, it sounds kind of stupid, and if you've ever watched DID YouTubers, a lot of them, it's hard not to think that they're just doing it for attention. And so, like, I look at that and I think about my experiences, and I'm like, I must be making things up somehow, or there must be some other explanation, because that just looks ridiculous. But yeah, so it's something that I haven't addressed. Whereas, like, being a loner, not being interested in people, to me, that's kind of normal. One of the interesting things about my life, I guess, is people that tell me, like, I've been very open about having had depression for ages, because that's one that I've known about the longest, is just being depressed for way too long. And so I talk about that quite openly, and people are like, oh, you're so brave to talk about this stuff. And I'm like, but that's one of the more normal things about me, I feel. And same with the schizoid thing, to me it just feels very normal. What doesn't feel normal is the dissociation stuff. So yeah, I mean, I know other people would be interested in my depression and schizoid journey, but to me what is most pressing is dissociation, understanding it, figuring out what do I even do with it. I do feel like my life is kind of stuck because I stopped, like, when I was younger I used to humor that part of me, and then it sort of went away for a bit, and I thought, oh, I've grown out of it, but now I'm back to having more problems with it and going, oh, maybe I didn't make it up after all, but now what? Because, hopefully I've grown and matured and won't go in that same way I used to, but what do I do instead? I don't know, I have no guidance. So yeah, I guess that's probably the main reason to not keep making too many, like, at least not time-based schizoid updates. Obviously, if something comes up, I will talk about it, because that's what I do. Otherwise, I probably forget what I was going on about, what I was thinking about. And sometimes when I'm thinking about something, it just has to come out. Otherwise, it swirls in my head a lot. Yeah, so I didn't mean to talk about the dissociation stuff so much. I'm actually quite tired today because I didn't sleep so well. So yeah, try to get the thoughts on track. But yeah, no, schizoid sort of forcing me to, because like the dissociation and the sense of self issues I've had for a really, really long time, but it's only after getting the schizoid diagnosis leading to trauma admission that I can finally address that issue that has been much bigger for me in my life, much more like, what even is my brain doing? So yeah, it's kind of interesting how one thing can lead in a direction that you weren't expecting, but on the other hand, always should have looked at. Yeah, and I know that's not everyone's experience. Another thing, like, getting the schizoid diagnosis and also being open about it is, like, it's just seeing people's reactions, because I am good at hiding what's up with me. I've learned over time to mask things. I've learned over time to be more social. I'm better at talking than I used to be, which I do credit YouTube with to some extent. YouTube, and also my first McDonald's job, because the guy who was my manager was really good at like helping me get into that kind of way of interacting. Because like when you're working at McDonald's, a lot of it's like once you learn the script of socializing, it's kind of easy, and the only times I was thrown off is when the customer said or did something that I wasn't expecting. It's like, you say, "Hi, how are you?" And then they say, "Good, how are you?" And I'd be like, "You're not supposed to ask me." And it would, at first it took me a while to like add a new thing to the social script that I was following. But yeah, no, that helped me, I guess, understand the idea of a social script, because before, if people try and talk to me, I would respond politely, but I think I was a lot worse at it, and I was more shy when I was younger and just not interested. I was definitely more overtly schizoid when I was in high school, and a little bit after. But yes, I think McDonald's helped me be able to talk more, teaching me the concept of a social script, and you just follow it like a robot. And then YouTube, it's just practicing talking to a camera and sort of getting used to speaking, because if I haven't spoken for a while, I do notice that my throat is like, what even are sounds? And sort of getting used to just acting more expressive, and some days that's easier than others. I think today is a bit more difficult because I am tired, but doing my best. So like to get back to the point I was originally on, being open about being schizoid is interesting, because it's not common in schizoids to do what I'm doing. There's a few out there, but not many. And it makes people think that I can't possibly have schizoid, but I'm like, all these diagnoses, they're just labels, and like people don't fit neatly into little psychological boxes defined by the DSM or ICD. Everyone's a little bit different, and it is sort of recognized that there are more covert forms of schizoid, masked schizoid, secret schizoid. Unfortunately, a lot of the research is pretty old and probably outdated, and, more research needs to be done, but because we don't come forward, how is anyone ever going to research this? But the other thing that, like I've seen more and more as I've looked at stuff, is that personality disorders are often comorbid with other issues. Depression being an obvious one, but often personality disorders will be comorbid with other personality disorders. So if someone's got traits from one thing and another thing, that's not inconsistent as long as you still fit the criteria for both. I seem to have some problems with dissociation. I have heard that some forms of dissociation are common in schizoids, but it seems to be mainly the depersonalization and derealization, the identity issues that I haven't seen as much of, but I don't know. I do wonder if having those identity issues might also be why it's been easier for me to be covert, because in my normal state of being, I probably am more of that schizoid kind of, standard thing. But when I have that other switch in my mind going on, and depending on what exactly is going on, it can change how I'm acting quite a bit. And I think over time, as I've tried to incorporate that into my life instead of just pushing it away all the time, trying to incorporate it into my life has sort of bled over some of the characteristics. Because I don't lose my memory. I don't know if I mentioned that. I don't lose my memory, so I know what I've been doing. So some of those characteristics have gotten a bit blurred over time, and I think that's made things easier. But also I was on antidepressants way back, and I think that helped me have more energy, and having more energy made it easier to act in a more slightly extroverted way in short bursts. I can act more extroverted sometimes, but to sustain it, no, I need that introverted recharge. But yeah, being on the antidepressants did help that, and I think that helped me also become more covert. But yeah, no, it's interesting. People are kind of purists in some way. If you're not pure schizoid sticking to the stereotype, you can't possibly have it. And it just makes me think of the metal scene, because there are people in the metal scene who are if you aren't in these specific forms of metal, it's not real metal. And I'm someone who likes fusion genres. Yeah, and then like, even with goth, there's some people who think you're only allowed to like 80s goth music. And it's just like, what happened to that being a culture of individuality and doing your own thing? Now you all have to follow yet another rule. It's kind of weird. But yeah, no, I've never been good at clubs and communities and being part of a group, which I guess is another schizoid thing. Like, I don't even join the schizoid groups. But yeah, no, just people's attitudes have been interesting. Some of the arguments that I've had in the comments from people leaving, just messages that don't entirely make sense, or they think they know my life better just because they've seen a few YouTube videos. Like how I present on YouTube, that's what I'm like when I finally have the energy to be able to turn on the camera. Imagine the rest of the time when I don't have the energy to be on camera, what I'm like. You have no idea. I've spent most of the last 2 weeks in bed actually because the depression's flared up and I've had issues with dizziness and so on. So I don't know if I got physically sick or if it was all the stress that I was going through a month or so ago with like Centrelink and stuff. Yeah, but I don't know, it's kind of funny, that stuff. And it's interesting also people saying that they're schizoid. You can never be sure on the internet. People will say they're schizoid, but how do you know? You haven't seen their medical records, and even if they've been diagnosed, there's always a possibility of misdiagnosis. I'm aware that it's possible that I would fit better into some other category, but since we haven't found it yet, schizoid it is. But then there would be other people who haven't been diagnosed, haven't sought diagnosis, just think they're schizoid, and you never really know. But I wonder, because some of them will be very insistent on connecting with me, which is kind of odd, and then they seem surprised when I'm not interested in them. And I think it comes back to some of the parasocial thing, because like I'm talking to the camera, I'm making eye contact with the camera, and for some of you, you'll think that I'm talking to you. And a lot of YouTubers try and do that. They will give you the eye contact and pretend to be your friend, because that's a way of them getting you to be more of a viewer so that they can have more subscribers and, more watch time and leading to more ad revenue. Maybe you'll sign up to their memberships and so on. They will try to do that. So they're actually trying to make you do the parasocial relationship thing. But for me, like, ultimately, to me, I'm talking to a webcam, but I understand that I have an audience, and so I'm trying not to be too, I'm only talking to myself in my head kind of thing. But ultimately, I don't know who you are, and I think most YouTubers would be the same. They just won't admit to this, but they don't really care about you. They just care about what they can get from you in terms of like building their channels. Like if I wanted to do more of that, I'd probably polish my videos up and have a script and not ramble like I am now. But yeah, that's just like it's kind of an interesting thing that people saying they're schizoid want to have a connection with me and are surprised when I don't care. And it's not just being schizoid, it's that I genuinely don't know who you are. From the vast majority of you, all I ever see of you is like a comment that comes up, often with an anonymous username and no pictures. You don't make videos, so I don't know who you are. And yeah, it's one of those weird kind of things. And then there's the people who think they can fix me despite not really knowing all the things that I've tried, and not knowing, a lot of people are overseas, they don't know what Australia's system's like, and the New South Wales health system that I'm in, there's a lot of that goes on. And then there's people who just make these weird assumptions. I think every now and then it's kind of fun to Google yourself, and I Googled my username one day, and it came up on like someone was trying to give examples of like MBTI types, the Myers-Briggs types, which is an outdated system, but they never came to me and said, have you done one of these tests to check? Now, I haven't done the official test, but anytime I've done one of those internet tests, I get INTJ, I think, and this person was trying to say that I was an ENTP or something, purely based on a couple of videos that they've nitpicked, which, yeah, it's just like, people think they know you and they really don't, and that's one of the interesting things about being a schizoid YouTuber. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any more to say, but I do think that schizoid is one of the least interesting things about me. So it's odd to me that so many people have been interested, but then again, like, I am not really interested in my own content. Like, doing it is therapeutic, but I have no real interest in watching myself. I sometimes tell myself that maybe one day in 10 years' time I'll come back and watch something that I've said, but I haven't really even watched my old videos, so I probably never will watch my old stuff. But yeah, there's that sort of therapeutic thing of, because, keeping a diary that I can't easily delete, because even if I delete the videos, someone out there has seen it, so it's never really gone. Yeah, for me, that's oddly therapeutic. But yeah, I forget where I was going with that. Anyway, I'm tired. I was doing better yesterday, but I just didn't sleep well at all last night, so a bit low energy. I hope that's a reasonable update on Schizoid and what I'm thinking about it. And there's not really any particular therapies for it, so I don't really expect it to change. It's more just something I have to manage, at least with depression, like having that sort of recurring depression thing. I've accepted that I'm not ever going to be like properly cured of that, but at least I can have better periods of time and sort of manage things when the depression flares up. With Schizoid, it's kind of, because it's a personality disorder, it's much more entrenched, and so it's just about managing my life around that and recognizing a few things. And even, I think one of the odd things is, like, I can separate how I think about the world, like in terms of more of that instinct feeling, kind of, this is how I do the world. But I can also see from a disjointed logical perspective that we are social creatures, and so as much as I'm saying I don't want connections and blah blah, I can see that on another level, maybe on an unconscious level, that I'm not able to access and will constantly be in instinctive denial of. At some level, I must need some kind of connection, and I'm aware of that paradox, I guess, because that's how we evolved. And so that's probably one of the harder things to get my head around, but I don't know that anyone is going to be able to therapy my way through it. I think it's something I have to figure out for myself. And so I know honestly, I don't think the schizoid thing about me needs to change, but I can see the other argument of why it should. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's those two different perspectives, right? I am getting a bit confused because, yeah, it's just... Anyway, so I don't think I need a change, but I also think I do. And so I need to find ways, I guess, to be more involved in society, or at least pieces of society, and try and manage my way through it, because the way that I'm living now, I'm not doing well with the getting past the depression, and the depression is probably the worst part of all this, having to call up a crisis line and asking them if I need to go to hospital is not fun, and then not feeling like I want to be here. There's no other option. It's either I'm here or I'm not. And yeah, probably err on the side of caution and just stay here as long as I can. But if I'm going to be stuck in existence, then I need to find ways to make it better. And so, yeah, engaging with society, I guess I'm trying to convince myself to find ways to do that I don't entirely hate, and manage my way through it. I hope that makes sense. I know that was a few minutes of me trying to meander around that thought. So, I don't think I need a change, but I do think I need to change some things. It's hard to get my head around. But so, yeah, I'm trying to figure that out, I guess. But then there's the dissociation stuff. Maybe that'll help me connect. Maybe that's what I need to do, is just not be me in order to connect with the world, and then find some kind of purpose in this really dumb existence we're all stuck in. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was a bunch of... Anyway, I should probably wrap this up because Mum will be home soon and whatever. But yeah, so a year since diagnosis, haven't been able to really get good help. Interesting kind of journey. I'm hoping this year things will get better, but we'll see what happens. I guess, you know, you can subscribe if you're more into that, but I have to warn you every now and then there's like half an hour of ants or whatever else, because I just make videos about anything. Chances are, if you've gotten to the end of this video, though, you're already following my stuff. Yeah, what else am I supposed to do if I'm going to be a good YouTuber? Tell you to like the video and shit. I don't know. Anything else? Well, okay, I got me Patreon thank yous, especially this sect on screen, Solar Scribe Chronicler, who I'm also mentioning in every video. Thank you for the support. And yeah, no, this year there's so many plans to try and make life more tolerable, and but you know, a lot of it is happening at the end of this month. You know, changing psychologists, we'll see what happens. I think there was something else at the end of this month, but I can't remember. And then eventually, oh, today I was on the phone with some, you know, trying to find psychiatrists. I may have found a practice, and I've called my GP clinic. My GP is away, which is frustrating, but they might be able to get another doctor to change my referral. And then maybe I'll be able to see a psychiatrist in mid-March if they have space for me. And then I'm on the waiting list for the DID specialist. I don't know if that'll even happen, but yeah, that is something that I need to be looking at, and probably need to be braver about bringing up in that kind of a mental health professional context. Otherwise I'll never deal with it. Yeah, and then I got to try and get my hobbies on track, try and get my health on track, and yeah, just make life not suck so much. And I think that's where I'm at, so I'm not going to do any more, you know, like specific schizoid updates based on time. I'm just going to do it when an issue comes up that seems related to schizoid. That's what I'm going to do. I hope that makes sense, and I do think the dissociation stuff's probably going to be more pressing, although you can tell I'm still trying to like weave my way around the actual issue, so that one's harder for me to talk about. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know I keep going in circles. I think that means I'm done, so catch you later. I'm going to have a rest, and hopefully tomorrow will be a better day.